Hey YouTubers, what's going on? My name is Seaweed Sam, and recently I've gotten some comments on my YouTube videos about the weapons that I've been using, and today I'm going to show you guys a few builds of weapons that I like to use while camping Immercom. The first step in building a weapon is to decide on what caliber we're going to use. We really want something that doesn't drop off heavily at range, as 100 to 150 meter shots are to be expected when you're protecting Immercom. Due to the ballistics changes in 12.12, 5.56 and 5.45 are significantly worse at range than they used to be, so I wouldn't even use them at Immercom. But if you want to go down that path, use the principles taught to you in this video to build your guns, and it should work fine. Now, after knocking out those calibers, that leaves us with 308, 7.62x54R, and 7.62x39. I don't really like 7.62x39 due to its slow velocity and its relatively high bullet drop, and that leaves us with just 308 or 7.62x51 and 7.62x54R. The three basic principles that I base all my gun builds around for camping are the fact that you don't want to use tracer rounds, the fact that you always want to be suppressed, and the fact that you always want to have a high quality scope. Going loud will get you killed. If there are multiple chads or if you bought your first shot, they'll know exactly where it came from and you will end up getting shot at. And now for the higher quality scopes, generally if it's in a close range fight, you're always going to be better off with a Voodoo or a Razor Gen 2 than you are with a Valide or a TAC 30 because the eye relief is so much better, you'll be able to actually see what you're shooting at. And finally, for close range fights, always make sure you put either a flashlight, a laser, or the invisible IR on your weapon because it tightens your hipfire spread and really improves your chances of surviving at close range. Whichever one you use is just personal preference, they all do the exact same thing, but I personally use the blue laser sold by Skier Level 1. I have two rules when it comes to ammo. As I said earlier, I never use tracers as it gives your prey a better chance of finding out where you are and killing you. But the other rule I follow is that I spend as much on ammo as I possibly can. Nothing is worse than headshotting a Chad, only to realize your M80 round doesn't have the pin to go through his Alton in one shot. I recommend looking at ammo charts for a little while if you're new so you can get a general idea on what ammo is good and what isn't, but for the two calibers that I'll be talking about today, I can give some recommendations. For 308, I use either M80 or M61. M993 is good ammo, but it's too scarce to be used because you can only find it in ammo boxes and weapon crates. And M62 is a tracer, so I don't tend to use them for camping. I save that ammo for when I want to use an MDR inside of interchange or something like that. M80 is widely available from Peacekeeper 2 for only around 300 rubles a shot, while M61 is locked behind the task Wet Job Part 6 at Peacekeeper 4, or you can craft it at Workbench 3. If you craft it, the rounds cost a little over 3,000 rubles a shot, and if you buy it from Peacekeeper, it'll be a little over 2,500 rubles a shot. 2 or 3,000 rubles a shot may sound a little bit expensive, but if you're fighting someone with a slick, it's a guaranteed 2-shot to the thorax, and no matter what they're wearing, it's a guaranteed 1-shot through the helmet as long as it doesn't ricochet. And in my opinion, it's worth it if you're running into Chads often. For 7.62x54R, I either use PS ammo or SMB, and the main difference is that PS ammo has a chance to one-shot if they're not wearing very good armor, but SMB has much better pin, and it's almost a guaranteed 2-shot to the thorax no matter what they're wearing. It's purely up to your personal preference, and whether you run into nakeds more often or Chads more often. First, I'm going to go over 7.62x54R as it's my second favorite caliber to camp with. While they're not recommended, bolt actions are perfectly viable for camping at Immercom if you're a good shot under pressure. They're always going to put you at a disadvantage, especially at close range compared to a gun that shoots full auto or semi-auto, but if you're doing a task like Tarkov shooter or something like that, they work well. My recommendation for 7.62x54R is the SVDS. The SVD is the only semi-auto in the 7.62x54R category, and you can mod it down to a very reasonable recoil. With SMB ammo, you'll 2-shot a slick to the thorax consistently, and you do massive damage to the limbs and stomach even if you miss. The build I use for this gun includes the threaded adapter, the rotor 43 suppressor, the buffer tube stock adapter, the saw pistol grip, and SAG Mark I rail system. These are all the things that most people have access to from their traders or for cheap on the flea. The rest of the parts are really going to depend on your budget and what level your traders are at. I use the MOE stock and butt pad on all of my guns because I think it has the best combination of recoil and ergonomics, as well as the Vortex Razor Gen 2 with the delta point on top of it, along with the SE5 grip. If you don't have max traders, just use whatever you can get your hands on for a reasonable price. When someone gets shot in the face with SMB, they're not going to care what grip the gun was using. They're dead regardless. Now let's move on to where it gets really interesting, 308. Unlike 7.62x54R, there are many different choices of guns you can use in this caliber: semi-auto, full auto, or bolt action. As I stated before, bolt actions are not really recommended because they'll put you at a disadvantage, but they are viable. If you really want to use one, maybe to level your sniper skill for Wet Job Part 6 or something like that, I suggest using the DVL-10 with the integral suppressor. Due to how quiet it is, people like 30 meters away will sometimes be confused as to where the shot came from because of how it sounds. All the builds that I'm going to show you today are semi-auto guns, and it's 3 different tiers of guns: good, better, best. I generally use the good tier if I've been having a bad day, I've lost a couple kits, and I want some kills and loot, but I don't want the chance of losing a decent kit. I use the second tier for when I'm maybe camping with a duo, or if I've had a good day and I feel like using a nice gun. The final tier is usually what I run when I want to chat it out and I'm running some pretty good armor and I want to bring in a GL40 or something along those lines. Let's go ahead and get started on tier 1. The first gun I'm going to be showing you today is the RFB, and all you really need for the RFB is a scope, a grip, and a suppressor. For this tier, I usually go with the Valday or the TAC 30 because they're the cheapest 2 sights that you can put on this gun, and I always use the SRD suppressor. It's the one with the little nubs on it. You can use whatever cheap grip you can get from your traders, but I prefer the Shift for the extra ergo because this thing is hopeless for recoil. This build totals about 170 to 190,000 rubles, and it performs very well. For the next tier up, the gun we're going to be showing off is the SR25. For this build, I used the Vortex Razor Gen 2 scope with the delta point on top, the KAC QDC suppressor and muzzle brake kit, along with an enhanced tube in the MOE stock and butt pad. You can use whichever grip and foregrip you like, but I prefer the Growl S and SE5 if I'm going for efficiency, or the canted RK1 grip if I'm going for looks. This build totals about 280 to 300,000, which is a very good price point for how deadly this gun is with either M80 or M61. With this build, you end up with 71 recoil, which feels much better than the RFB's 140, and you can definitely tell the difference in gunfights. You can land follow-up shots easier at range, as well as be much more competitive in close range fights. For my tier 3 weapon, I love to use the M1A. The M1A is a very versatile weapon, and while you can use it in close quarters combat effectively due to its low recoil, it truly excels at long range combat with rapid follow-up shots and great accuracy. If all else fails, due to its 50 round mag availability, you can always just spray and pray. My build includes the SASS chassis, the 22-inch barrel, the KAC muzzle brake kit and suppressor, and the same scope setup used in the previous build. I still use the MOE stock and butt pad on the SI Advanced tube, but this time I include a 50 round drum mag for extra firepower. Use whichever grip and foregrip your traders have available, and you're ready to rock. This build comes out to 380 to 400,000 rubles, and it's worth every penny if you're bringing in a big kit. With 50 recoil and 50 bullets of M61, you can mow down any 5-man that walks by your bush with ammo to spare. This gun also works very well for thermal builds if you're into that type of thing. Finally, I'm going to talk about my favorite gun build for camping Immercom, which is hardly a build at all. It's a GL40 with a delta point on top. To get this weapon, you need to complete Wet Job Part 6, which involves getting level 7 sniper skill, which is a fairly hard task, but when you do it, the rewards are very worth it. There's nothing like getting a hate mail from a Chad because he sees the Immercom protector killed him with a 1.5 million ruble gun. It's not very efficient with money, as every time you pull the trigger, you're sending 40,000 rubles down range, but it's an instant guaranteed kill on most Chads, and it's very fun to use. Along with having all these positives, it also makes the armor full durability when you kill them, so it's easier to use if they're wearing something that doesn't repair well. Hopefully everyone watching this video has a chance to camp with one this wipe, but if not, hopefully these other gun builds helped you out a little bit, and have a great rest of your day.